To hold death's hand in mine. Blood and roots. The Imperial armies and their allies from the Great Forest Orcs were forced to retreat into the Barrens. The Navarre feel the loss of Isaila's dance especially keenly. For the first time since they committed to destroy the Valorn, the spirit of the nation stumbles. The surviving soldiers of the Black Thorns feel the loss particularly keenly. They watch the southern borders of the Barrens, eager to welcome survivors from the dance until the very last moment when they must march west to resupply in Rykos. Their hope fails quickly. Barely a handful of survivors make it to the Barrens after the winter solstice. The wound of grief goes unannealed, without solace, and it may take a long time to heal. The scattered rumours emerging from East Ring speak of carnage. The walking dead, the undying remnants of the Iron Helms, continue to feast on the warriors of the Druge. They rip and tear into the orcs of the Malum, but their fury is ultimately unbound and undirected. As the weeks pass, it is clear that the winter spirits bound to the shattered army are gaining the upper hand. Whatever remnant of the former soldiers of Varushka still remained within the ghouls is drowned out by the indiscriminate hunger raging within them. They are drawn equally to the splintered remnants of the Imperial armies and the isolated steadings that have so far avoided the attention of the invaders. Nothing stands between the folk of Western Therunin and the orcs of the Malum. As the Druge march, word begins to spread that the priests of the National Assembly urge their people to flee. Therunin is lost, they say. No Imperial armies are coming to protect it. Those who stand and fight will have no support, although their courage is recognized. Those who flee should seek to carry the law of Peakedge Stead with them to the wider empire. It is difficult for many of those who call Therunin their home to hear these words. Similar assurances were made about Liathaven as well. Yet years have passed, and still the western forests remain solidly under the control of the Jotun. The enemy have built new settlements there. They have even chosen to rename the territory Ashvale. Why should anyone believe that Therunin will be any different? The words of the assembly fall like the grim knell of doom on the ears of those who hear them. So many sacrifices made, and still the Imperial Military Council cannot justify protecting the people of Therunin. The Empire armies march west, leaving Therunin alone in the hand of the Druge. Those who can fight and choose to bear arms. Those who cannot should seek sanctuary amongst our neighbours and find safety in our warehouses. Land can be reclaimed. Our people cannot. Survival is not cowardice. It is loyalty to the future. We will one day seize back. Help Thornsong and House of Healing carry their work to safety. Let the knowledge and legacy of Therunin outlast the Druge's grasp. We will not allow what happened in Liathaven to happen here. We are the shield, the thorn and the song that will not die. You cannot abandon who you are. We are Therunin. Travid Longest Path, Navarre National Assembly, Winter Solstice, 386 YE. Vote, Greater Majority, 331 to 0. Fear blooms in Therunin, but our kin remain. Our hearths roar outside the Druge's grasp, open to any great forest orc. We offer them to resettle out of danger and protect the young, old and weak, through to Hercynia, Meoran, and Broceliond. We are grateful to deep loyalty forged in blood. May the spear of pines rise as saplings again. Bryn Mawr Root Round, Navarre National Assembly, Winter Solstice, 386 YE. Vote, Greater Majority, 332 to 10. Sacrifice is the soul, heart, and blood of Navarre. We bleed, grieve, and stand tall for the choices we make. But we are not the only ones who sacrifice, with the nation of Varushka losing its children for Therunin. Alderai the Fair and all warriors of the Iron Helms sacrificed all. We honour their sacrifice and welcome all who stood with us to our hearths forever. In sacrifice we grieve, in courage we remember. Riziard Dancewalker, Navarre National Assembly. Winter Solstice, 386YE. Vote, greater majority, 289 to 0. Citizens of Thurunin, hear your guides. The Druj have come. If you cannot fight, seek immediate refuge with our imperial neighbours. Highguard, Urizen, and Dawn have thrown their doors open for us. If you can fight, stay and harass the Druj with stealth, ambush, and the arts of guerrilla warfare we are so adept at. All refuge offered to Navari is extended to our oath-sworn siblings of the Great Forest Orcs, bound in blood and ink as we are. Raywin Eternal, Navarre National Assembly. Winter Solstice, 386YE. Vote, greater majority, 336 to 0. Through the Valley. The words of the Assembly are not welcome, but some choose to heed them nonetheless, especially in the Tarn Valley. The waters of the lower valley are tainted now, corrupt by the effluent from Safal's cauldron. The threat of the Druj is immediate. The bulk of the invading forces are still in Eastring and East Ashes. While their armies may be delayed fighting the ravening remnant of the Iron Helms, their raiders still strike westward into the valley. Some of the people of the lower valley have already fled north into the barrens to the welcoming eaves of Paytart. The last of the great forest orc villages and proto-steadings are emptied. As they depart, the orcs invite their neighbours to come with them to seek the safety of the weirwood groves. The children of the great forest know what it is like to lose their homes to the malice of the Druj. Others, orc and human alike, flee to the upper valley. Some join the defence of the steadings there, and others press on toward Peak Edge Song. When the Navarre and their friends flee west, they are perhaps surprised to find people travelling in the opposite direction. The Senate has established the first true sodality of the new era, the Imperial Apothecaries Guild. Thanks in part to the support of Highguard, an antidote to the poison of the lower valley has been found, and these masters of herb lore from many nations have been charged with putting it to good use. Or at least, that is the plan. Once it becomes clear that the assemblies are urging everyone to flee Thurunin, the plan is forced to change. If there had been any Imperial presence in Thurunin, or the Druj hadn't decided to advance, then it might have been possible to begin the work of clearing the poison. Instead, it is clear that it would be madness to attempt to enter the lower valley in force. Any apothecaries who made the attempt would quickly fall victim to the depredations of the Druj. They would be murdered, or, more likely, enslaved, if the Druj discovered they were skilled apothecaries. Either way, their lives would be forfeit, and it would achieve nothing. Instead, the majority of the apothecaries set to work helping the refugees, providing much-needed medical assistance to those who have been injured. Many moved to bolster the defences of the Upper Tarn, or to turn back entirely to help evacuate Peak Edge Song. In many ways, the Empire has been fortunate. The efforts of the Imperial Apothecaries Guild have still cost the Senate 10 thrones, but the leadership and direction of the sodality has prevented the outcome from being much worse. A ravening flood. There is no doubt that they have made the wise decision. The last of those prepared to quit the Lower Tarn have barely crossed the border before the ravening storm breaks. Uncountable thousands of Druj warriors spill out of East Ashes and East Ring, tearing through the defenders who remained behind. The Black Wind are in the vanguard, many bearing the torn banners of the Iron Helms and Isaila's Dance, or wielding weapons taken from slaughtered soldiers who never left the eastern regions. The true Druj are close behind them, their own standards fluttering in the midwinter winds. Wicked scorpions, pale ants, sickly yellow serpents, crimson lizards with ivory horns and talons patterned with blood, the burning beetles, and everywhere the twining brambles of the Thornborn. The Lower Tarn Valley falls swiftly, the remaining steadings offering little resistance to the force that washes over them. Yet the Druj armies seem to want to spend as little time as possible there. They may have their own antidotes to the corruption of Cephal's cauldron, but the poison that seeped into the ground still costs them. They do not delay, do not divert their forces to all the distant corners of the marshy valley. Only the Thornborn seem to make a point of seeking out the defenders of the eastern valleys, relishing every opportunity to smash a steading or put a former Great Forest Orc village to the torch. The bulk of the invading force pushes through quickly, following the refugees to the Upper Tarn Valley. Even the Black Wind seem more interested in conquest than in tormenting the Navarre, always pushing forwards rather than pausing to make an example of those crushed in their wake. Very few Navarre who face the Druge survive the experience, but their focus does not make them any less terrible. Anyone in the path of the armies is either slaughtered without mercy or enslaved by the chicard of the Red Lizard, who follow close behind the other armies. They are especially eager to drag the herb masters and apothecaries of Navarre back to the Malum. Just as well, the Apothecaries Guild chose the wiser course. Most of those who fall into the hands of the Druge slavers choose to accept the gift of Kayla rather than the collar and the lash. After all, they know that nobody is coming to save them anytime soon. Better to seek the labyrinth than to become a slave of the Druge. It is no doubt a source of fury for the Red Lizard, for all the good that does those left with no choice but the nature of their deaths. Pride and courage. The defenders of the Upper Tarn Valley believe themselves ready for what is to come. Resolute, those who have chosen to stay and fight prepare themselves to meet the advance of the Druge. Blood Harrow Filtra flows like water thanks to the presence of the Apothecaries Guild, and any who want it can secure a flask or two of one of the legacies of thorns. Their numbers are further reinforced by a scattering of healers from the houses of healing, and a handful of heralds of Lord Rain, ready with words of healing and purification. Only a scant few of those who have remained behind to fight believe they might halt the invaders' advance. Have they not faced the Valorn for centuries and turned it back every time? Even there, though, many must know in their hearts that their task is impossible. The Druge are a very different enemy to the Valorn. Cunning, cruel, wicked. Most of the defenders know that the best they can hope for is to delay, to buy more time for those who choose to evacuate to do so. There is a sorrowful pride in many of those who would not flee. Knowing they are prepared to lay down their lives for their family, for their homes, some find that all those little distractions of day-to-day life drop away, bringing with them a bittersweet clarity. The sacrifice of those who remained behind to garrison the steadings of Upper Valley buys only a few hours. The blighted armies roll over the defenders like a tidal wave, shattering the defences of anyone who lies in their path westward. But each moment they're delayed is precious, granting those Navarre who've heeded the call to abandon their homeland the breath they need to flee. As in the Lower Tarn, they waste comparatively little time consolidating their hold on the region. Some of the steadings do not see a single orc through the entire campaign. It seems the eyes of the Druge armies are on sweeter fruit. Song into silence. The Druge come, then, to Peakedge Song. Here, their advance slows slightly as they encounter the swiftly assembled fortifications raised by the Tower Jacks. Unfortunately, the embankments and ditches, the palisades and spikes laid down to defend the region have lost much of their effectiveness since the League engineers left for Redoubt. Only once, years ago, have the Orcs of the Malum tried to lay siege to Peakedge Stead. The conquerors of Rykos, trapped between the great forest of Petart and the Imperial armies, sought to escape through Thorunin to the Barrens. They were pushed back into the killing ground of Highguard by the armies of Navarre and the Granite Pillar. They did not come close to achieving a foothold, and were ultimately forced to flee north to escape Rykos, paying a terrible price for doing so. This time, though, things are very different. This is not a beleaguered and battered force of Druge on their last legs, but a grand host of spears and arrows, merciless fangs and cruel claws. Peakedge Stead is a powerful and enduring symbol of hope for many Navarre, a place of healing and gentleness, a quiet contrast to the terrible battle they fight against the Valorn. It is a symbol of cooperation, of bringing together, where Navarre Highguard and the Great Forest Orcs all worked to preserve life and bring succor to those who cannot be saved. It is where Tarnfather's houses of healing stand, and where the great college of the apothecary arts, Thornsong House, was established. The college, at least, is safe for now. Barely a day after the winter solstice, as night fell, a wall of impenetrable fog wrapped itself around the college grounds, hiding them from sight. The wall remains, warding the entirety of the house. Coils of mist form and shift, giving the impression of great thorn-wrapped brambles wrapped around the hidden buildings. Those who dare to venture within are confused and glamoured, unable to find anything within, to the frustration of the invaders from the Malum. Some of the staff departed as the wards started to rise, but many more remain within. They protect their stores of lore, and by all accounts have enough supplies to last a year. They will wait for the Imperial armies to free Therunin, protected from any danger that might seek to harm them, but hidden also from those allies who might seek to help them. The Druge beat against the League defences, drawing closer and closer to Peakedgestead. Many desperate councils are held, and a significant portion of those who call the steading their home choose to accept the offer of sanctuary in High Chalcis to the west. Those patients able to make the punishing journey with the Druge at their back do so, but there are more who cannot move, who would not survive the exhausting flight to Rykos. Some of those who tend them, the vines and physics, apothecaries and magician healers, refuse to leave their patients behind. Humans and orc alike refuse to flee, doing their best to reinforce the walls of the great hospital steading. There is hope that the Druge advance might have spent itself in conquering Tarn Valley and against the Towerjack's defences. Rainfall. It is a vain hope. The Druge armies do not stop closing on Peakedgestead. The drums of war batter and beat in the nights, and the first torches appear through the woods a little less than a month before the spring equinox. There will be no welcoming this year at Peakedgestead, for the first time in 200 years or more. There is a bitter argument about whether it might be best to fire the steading, to stop the herb gardens and stocks of medicine falling into the hands of the Druge. But the defenders refuse to give in to despair, even though defeat seems inevitable. As the sun rises on the last day, a soft, sweet rain begins to fall. Where the raindrops strike soil, yellow and white and pale lavender spring flowers bloom. The Druge pause, uncertain, but no more confused than the defenders of Peakedgestead. Then, with a noise like thunder, the spring that rises in the heart of the houses of healing just outside the steading explodes. A water spout 60 feet high rises over the trees. Water flows down toward Peakedgestead, streams dancing and coiling around each other joyously like living things. Within minutes, the streams have become a river, a moat around the hospital and the houses of healing. Then, as the Druge launch their first volley of arrows against the defenders, the ground explodes. Brambles erupt from the wet soil where the flowers bloomed, each as thick as a person around. They rise like serpents, weaving themselves together with vicious thorns facing the Druge armies. They spread outward as well as upward, creating an impassable barrier around Peakedgestead, a thicket of impenetrable greenery. At the same time, heralds of Ossagran emerge from the Regio of the Healing House and move through the defenders with words of support and encouragement. As well as the person-sized heralds the Empire has seen before, there are a dozen massive guardians, quadruped creatures of living wood that creak and groan as they walk, flowers exploding in their wake as they move to form a perimeter around the steading and begin to sing, deep, bubbling notes that twine around each other in strange harmony, all through the thicket of massive brambles. Huge buds emerge and open into beautiful flowers. The Druge, all their armies, cannot penetrate the wall surrounding Peakedgestead and the houses of healing. Those who try are turned back. Hacking at the brambles proves fruitless as the singing guardians simply heal any damage inflicted on the hedge. A few of the servants of the Centipede General, who often march with the more venomous of the Druge armies, manage to find a way through, but the defenders make quick work of them. Peakedge Song falls, but Peakedgestead stands, for now at least. There is muted celebration within the walls, but the heralds of Father Waterfall do not join in. There is a palpable aura of sadness around those who move among the defenders of the steading, and the explanation for their sorrow soon puts paid to any hope of triumph. It seems that this wall cannot last. The unsubtle, ungentle manifestation of spring magic taxes Ossogran's power greatly. There are armies of Druj, cunning Gulai, and terrible servants of the Scorpion Queen and the Woodwife among them. The wall will not last. As the spring equinox falters, so too will the hedge of Lord Rain. Peakedge Stead and all it represents will be destroyed by the Druj. So too will the houses of healing. There is a way to ensure it does not, but the means to achieve that end lies in the hands of the Conclave and the Senate, far away at Anvil. This is a doom held in abeyance, not averted. Spite and malice. Denied their prize, the armies of the Druj complete their conquest of Peakedge Song. The Arrow Viper and the Hunting Scorpion pursue those who tarried too long before fleeing, chasing them down and slaying them. Most are dead before they realize the dangers that surrounds them. The Druj impale their bodies on spears along the road to High Chalcis. A significant force remains outside Ossogran's hedge, watching. The Druj are no masters of day magic, but it would be foolish to assume they did not know how tenuous this ward will prove to be. The rest of the Druj armies spread through Thurunin as the spring equinox approaches, securing their new territory. While Peakedge Stead is safe for a few more weeks, Thurunin itself has fallen entirely to the Druj. They are masters of this place now, and those Navarre who remain are hunted prey where once they were masters of marsh and forest. Of course, not all inhabitants of Thurunin live in the Tarn Valley in Peakedge Song. There are steadings within the Valorn itself, fortified structures designed to provide places of fleeting safety against the Valornspawn. They, at least, are not in danger from the Druj, surely? Tainted Vengeance. After their defeat during the Battle of Ashwater, the army of the Tainted Basilisk withdrew from Thurunin. Now, it seems, they have returned. Following behind the conquering wave of the Malum, the Gulai who lead the army weave ritual magic to support their fellows, but they rarely engage the Navarre directly. They lag behind as the barbarians press ever westward. The soldiers of the Tainted Basilisk move slowly, with purpose, more interested in gathering magical resources than fighting, it seems. Only at the old, abandoned steading of Return do the Tainted Basilisk take the lead. They seem to have a particular interest in that place, where the exemplar Geralt Brackensong gave his life to thwart the machinations of the Green Mother, to keep the slumbering Valorn of Thurunin undisturbed. So it is of particular concern that the very few eyewitnesses that make it back to Imperial lands claim that amongst the orcs of the Basilisk are a number of unnatural creatures, inhabitants of the primal forest, figures of wood and bark wound with ivy and vines, some no taller than an orc or human, others towering above them. Servants, most likely, of the Queen of Brambles, who the Druj know as Greenhand or Nest of Thorns. Warm honey flows like sap among the Gulai of the Tainted Basilisk as the spring equinox approaches. Then, barely a week before the equinox, while the rest of the Druj lay siege to Peakedge Stead or hunt straggling Navarre in the Tarn Valley, something happens. Adepts of spring lore, especially those trained as Vates, sense a pulse of spring magic rising in Thurunin and striking out along the Trods, into the Barrens, into Rykos, into Redoubt and Zenith. Those who are drawing on the Trods at the time are knocked off their feet, left insensible for a few minutes by the force of the magic. Everywhere along the Trods of the neighbouring territories, plants rise and stretch, leaves rippling across their branches, buds opening, life straining through their roots. It is followed a moment later by a sensation of inrushing, of sucking, as if the magic that has come roaring out of Thurunin is being dragged back along the Trods, like water spiralling down a drain. It takes only a few days for the magicians outside of Thurunin to realize what has happened. With blood magic, with goetic invocations of Greenhand and Nest of Thorns, with terrible drums and chants, with the use of items of worth seized from the steading of Return, and with nobody to oppose them, The tainted basilisk have finally realized the ambition that was denied them at the Battle of Ashwater. They have roused the Valorn of Tharunind to wakefulness. Game information regarding Tharunin. The Druj have conquered Tharunin. Peakedge Stead, the Houses of Healing, and Thornsong House are the only significant structures still in Imperial hands. Several titles have lost access to their commissions. The Druj have conquered the whole of Tharunin, save only the Valorn regions of Sweetglades and Greenheart. Following the Spring Equinox, all Imperial personal resources will experience the conquered territory's penalty to their production unless they are protected by magic such as Veil of Shadows. The loss of Tharunin has reduced the ability for Navarre to support armies from 6 to 5. The Garden of Glory, Peakedge Brokerage, and Stones from Blood have all been lost to the Druj. Their current status is unknown, but the titles associated with them will receive no benefit or production until the relevant regions are reclaimed and the situation can be assessed. At the urging of the assemblies, almost all the Navarre Stridings and many of the Navarre Steadings evacuated Tharunin before the Druj could overrun them. Refugees have found a welcome in Rykos, among the Great Forest Orcs in the Barrens and in northern Urizen. Others have simply joined some of the remaining Stridings that continue to walk the trods. The plan to remove the poisoned quality from the Lower Tarn Valley has failed. As explained in the Wasp Nest Wind of Fortune, the fact that the Druj have captured the Lower Tarn means the original plan will not work. There will be no opportunity to remove the poisoned quality unless the Druj are driven out. The 10 thrones of support the Senate applied has been used to aid the people of Tharunin and cannot be refunded. The situation with Peakedge Stead and the Houses of Healing is discussed in more detail in an upcoming Wind of Fortune. The Valorn of Tharunind. The Valorn of Tharunind has been roused. It is slowly reaching out into regions neighbouring Sweetglades and Greenheart. Parts of Morrow may also be imperiled. Any forest in Tharunin, Morrow, Zenith, Rykos, or the Barrens that provides Chaos Fruit will produce 2 additional Chaos Fruit after the Spring Equinox. Last autumn, Sintra Blackstaff sought to direct the force of the Valorn against Peakedge Stead. Now, with the direct aid of Yor Nagrar, the Tainted Basilisk have achieved something similar, but different. The Valorn is rousing in Tharunin, but it seems to be reaching out in all directions, not only towards Peakedge Song. Valorn miasma drifts north and west, and in Urizen, the Heliopticon glitters with worried news that pools of miasma have been spotted in the northern foothills of Peregro and Altis. Where there is miasma, there are Valorn spawn husks, and, because this is Tharunin, Ettercaps. Abominations shift in Sweetglades and Greenheart themselves, and the steadings within the Tharunin Valorn are quickly placed under siege. This is not a case of the Druj having awoken the entire Valorn all in one go, rather it is closer to the kind of thing the heirs of Tirunael tried to achieve. The Valorn has become active and seeks to expand. At the moment that expansion is focused on Peakedge Song and the Upper Tarn Valley. The Valorn is moving slowly at this time, but if it follows a similar pattern to that observed during similar incidents, it is likely to gather momentum as it expands. The energy that drives the expansion is likely to be comparatively short-lived. If it can be driven back, it will eventually slip back into an uneasy slumber again. If it is not driven back, and is allowed to infest an entire region, then the unnatural vitality that prevents the Valorn being directly damaged will mean reclaiming such a region will be next to impossible. Navarre prognosticators believe that by the start of the summer solstice, the Valorn will have overrun most of the steadings in Sweetglades and Greenheart, and have begun expanding into Peakedge Song and the Tarn Valley. After that, it's hard to say. A lot will depend on what the Druj are planning to do. It is entirely possible, given the involvement of Yor Nagrar, that the Valorn spawn and the miasma will not stop at the borders of Tharunin, and will eventually threaten the people of Highguard, Dawn, and Urizen. The burst of vitality along the trods around Tharunin seems to have brought with it a questionable benefit. Any forest that has been permanently diversified to produce Chaos Fruit will provide an additional 2 fruit at the summer solstice. Participation. Apothecaries. Characters with the Apothecary skill may have helped support the defenders in Tharunin. The Apothecary Guild, established by the Imperial Senate during the winter solstice, sought to remove the poisoned quality from the Lower Tarn Valley. They were prevented from doing so, and some chose to instead put their talents to work helping the defenders of Tharunin. Obviously, it was not possible at the winter solstice to formally join the guild, but there are player characters whose interests align with those of the guild. As such, any character with the Apothecary skill may decide that they would have been involved in Tharunin. Any such character may email at profouneddecisions.co.uk and request a lingering traumatic wound that represents injuries sustained during your time in Therunin. Be aware that these injuries will take the form of poisoned wounds and may prove fatal if not treated quickly. This opportunity is only available to characters with the Apothecary skill. While anyone may join the Apothecary's Guild once it is properly established, and anyone can roleplay they were involved in Therunin, the option of being poisoned by the Druge is only available to characters with the Apothecary's skill. The deadline for emailing Profound Decisions about this is midnight on the 31st of May. Participation. Navarre. Characters whose personal resource is in Therunin may email plot to request a traumatic wound. Any character whose personal resource is in Therunin may likewise email plot at profouneddecisions.co.uk and request a lingering wound, representing injuries received trying to hold the Druge back. Again, it's fine for people who are not based in Therunin to roleplay that they have been in the territory helping to resist the Druge advance, but the option to receive a lingering wound is only available to those who live in the territory. Alternatively, a character whose personal resource is in Therunin who wishes to have responded to the assembly urging them to flee may email plot at profouneddecisions.co.uk and ask to swap their current personal resource for a new standard personal resource in either the Barrens or Rykos, taking advantage of the new warehouses established there without paying the usual 2 crown fee. They'll start the spring equinox with their resource in the chosen territory. The deadline for emailing Profound Decisions about either of these options is midnight on the 31st of May.